Welcome to the Market Me podcast with your host, Mike Mall. Each episode of Market Me deconstructs real campaigns for actual businesses to improve their marketing efforts. Mike is the founder of Social Media House and a digital marketing consultant who teaches marketing strategy to executives and their teams from small business to Fortune 500 companies. Let's get started.
On this episode, we're speaking with Ian Reynolds of ZipTech. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I like how you're trying to compete with my my background.
Yeah, unfortunately, mine isn't real, so it makes it a little less cool. But you know, we can both enjoy it.
There you go. I love that. Well, tell me a little bit about ZipTech, the history, the background.
Sure. So ZipTech was founded about 10 years ago by my business partner. Really sort of started out of his experience in the software development space. He was part of a company, CTO. Company called Zinch. They grew that company, and then after 5 years exited to a company called Chegg. And so really liked the band that he was playing with, so to speak, and wanted to keep them together to keep playing tunes. And really for the last 10 years, we've been providing services to the marketplace, helping companies that otherwise didn't have access to a really competent engineering team get access to it, make it accessible. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years. It's been awesome.
Amazing. And it seems like I was taking a look on the site. It seems like you kind of work with anyone that's like a culture fit? Because it doesn't seem, the business size doesn't seem to make any difference to you guys, but
right. There's definitely a culture fit component to it. I mean, we've had to fire clients in the past. And so we really kind of vet people to make sure that we're a good fit to work with them and they're a good fit to work with us. We have a larger team, but we also try to keep it pretty tight knit, and that way we can put more attention to the clients that we are serving. Got it.
And then, so talk to me about the range of services. Is it kind of mostly like software or app-based or web, or is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, so we help people in that sort of full software development lifecycle. Let's say you just have a marketing website that you need, right? We can do this really, really high-end or low-end marketing websites all the way. We've done, some marketing websites as small as, $3,000 to things that are, hundreds of thousands of dollars for larger businesses because they have different needs, right? There is a spectrum for that. Then we also help folks with web application development, software development on, let's say, an existing software application. We do a lot of mobile, just as you said. We also do those hybrid technologies. And then we do core software development. So that's like, let's say somebody's got like a CNC machine or something like that, and they need something plugged into that with like an Adreno tool or something like that. We can do that type of programming as well, right? So deploy across about 75 different technologies. And that sort of breadth comes from the fact that there's just a lot of software technologies out there that are sort of commonly used. And so we have a couple hundred professionals on staff, and it just kind of makes it so that we can jump into just about any challenge. By and large, I think the work that we're doing, because that's the work that the market is asking for, is web and mobile development is really kind of what people are asking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of I'm even starting to see some companies that are focused. They have a lot of like legacy platforms starting to think about how do we stop patching this up? How do we actually break through to the next level and then like have a real modern platform? I think I'm seeing some businesses with some demand around that. Are you seeing?
We are. And so we're kind of like, you'd think that everybody would be on the cloud at this point, but actually that's not the case. You have a lot of folks who have physical infrastructure in their office. They still have a team that's maintaining that physical infrastructure, and they haven't gotten off of those things. I mean, we engaged with a company a couple of weeks ago where they've been in the same system in the same location in Ohio for 10 years. And they haven't sort of broken that chain. And the reality is that if you go to things like cloud, you go to things that are sort of web-based applications, and you're not maintaining that physical infrastructure yourself, you can actually cut costs. Everybody thinks, oh, that's going to be super expensive. But if I'm not maintaining infrastructure and I'm really just kind of deploying my code to some simple environments that are basically like upgraded on the fly, then a lot of problems go away.
Got it. And would you say that those, like for people that don't have a more foundational understanding of it, would you say that means it's just because the amount of like maintenance and like having a service person go to a location and do work versus having it being able to be, or is it like upgrading? Is it upgrading of those components as well, or is it a combination?
It's a combination, and I'd say in general for people starting off, for people that are even small businesses, right, they need to build something from scratch. The cost is just kind of incrementally and aggressively coming down. Your let's call them startup costs to build an app or build software are virtually non-existent now, right? So we have large enterprise applications that we built that are used, hundreds of thousands of users. They are ostensibly the business now for some of these businesses that we've built. Maybe they have 100,000 active users, but they're still a multi-million-dollar business. They're only paying something like $200 a month in server hosting and server infrastructure costs, right? So that's also part of what we do. We can do the whole DevOps cycle, right? We can make things so that there's full CI/CD. People are able to commit their code very easily. It streamlines the development process. So for companies with kind of legacy software, they can still implement those sorts of things to even save time, even if they're going to sort of retain their existing structure.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of the behind the scenes. I mean, obviously with that number of staff, that big of a team, you guys come across a lot of different trends in technology and where is a lot of the industry shifting towards? I know at one point everyone thought they needed a mobile app. Now I think kind of people have moved off of it a little bit, saying, well, are they gonna use that that iPhone space to get my app? Like what are you kind of seeing in terms of the trends in the technology?
Yeah, I think the biggest trends are really kind of a move to make everything kind of web accessible, right? So a lot of times you kind of remember going to old stores where you'd buy a literal off-the-shelf software, that you'd bring home on a CD and install. Well, there's still downloadable software, things that are executables on computers that you'd install, but I think you're seeing a continued migration to the web. Now, there's some things you are going to have to download, right? We're on a Zoom call. It makes sense for that to run on our hardware, but by and large, I think you're still seeing a sort of movement to the web application space. We're seeing that the kind of major technologies that are really kind of taking over the world, so to speak, are really Python and JavaScript technologies, right? You're just going to see everything pretty much written in Python and JavaScript until something else comes and sort of takes that over and makes it actually easier to program. So I'd say most new application development is kind of occurring in those two languages. While I did talk about we deploy across 75 different technologies, let's go through kind of the major technologies, right? So there's major software languages. There's Java, there's Node, there's PHP, there's Python, there's Ruby, and then a handful of other sort of JavaScript components. Then there's sort of Microsoft.NET technologies. But by and large, not even with our own business, but with other businesses, our competitors, and what we're seeing in the marketplace, the new things that are getting created, Python, JavaScript, choose those two things. And if you build your technology in that, you're going to have a good long shelf life.
Got it. And why do you think that is? Is it just the flexibility and the simplicity of it all? Is it a scalability factor? Why do you think that's?
It's the scalability factor, but more than anything, it's kind of this natural, let's call it information monopoly that is occurring in the marketplace, right? So if you use Google is written on large parts of Python. They do use JavaScript, right? They put out Angular, but it makes sense for people who want to go learn the technology that is getting used by the biggest companies in the world, right? And so by studying those technologies, right, they're kind of creating sort of let's call it an internal feedback loop where, hey, this is the biggest and best technology. I'm going to go learn that biggest and best technology. And then their buddy asks, hey, what technology should I learn? It goes to Python. And so it's kind of reinforcing itself as it's getting bigger and popular. There's in software development, there's lots of ways to skin the proverbial cat, but it's also eminently practical that we're kind of moving towards some of these more dominant technologies. It used to be that all enterprise software was pretty much just written in Java, but if you look at sort of the explosion of Python and JavaScript technologies, it's kind of disproportionately in that direction. And perhaps that sort of cycle occurs every 5 or so years, but we think Python and JavaScript technologies are here to stay.
That's cool. Yeah, because I know I'm not. I did one time. I did a HTML CSS an 8-hour online course. I was like, oh, that's as far as I'm going to get. It's just my brain wasn't wired to. But I think even when I was building something 7 years ago, it felt like more of an open-ended argument about what was the best. Like everybody had this path or this nuance or this opinion around it. So it's interesting to hear that kind of it's now developed into, and I'm sure there's people that still have varying opinions about these things, but it's interesting that there was like, something finally pushed through and kind of took over as the dominant language. So I didn't know that. That was cool.
Right. And I think you're going to see, going back to your kind of earlier point, I think you're going to see a lot of these legacy technologies where people are like, oh man, I've got this really old system. What should I, write it in? They're going to do a bunch of diligence and then they're going to come to the same conclusion, like, well, everybody seems to be writing in these two technologies. I might as well just kind of do it in this. And I think that's actually going to be helpful, that you're going to have some degree of sort of platform standardization for technologies, because it's going to make, just like markets get more efficient, it's going to make those businesses and supporting those applications much more efficient.
Got it. And so I'd love to pick your brain a little bit about the use of mobile apps. Like I said, I remember starting a couple of years ago, there was this huge surge of like, if we're going to do anything, we have to have an app. And I think it's like, I feel like people are kind of coming off of it a little bit, because it was like, are people going to download your pizza delivery app that's just you, or are they going to use Uber Eats? Like, is there a purpose? So what, how do you feel about like companies as a whole having apps? Do you feel like it's, for the most part, it's a bit of a waste of time? I mean, obviously there's a lot of different use cases, but just by and large, for everyone who's like, oh, I need an app, because I was told I need an app. What's your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's now, first there's a new technology that's kind of coming about, and it's kind of put out by Google, and Google is really pushing it. It's called a progressive web application, where if you go to ZipTech.com, it's actually a progressive web application. It's not a traditional website, where if I go to that website on my phone, I can actually download it just like I would an app. And it lets me download a lot of the features and a lot of the data and view it offline, right? And I get all of the features as if ZipTech.com were an app. For our purposes, obviously, that's a marketing website. It's sort of limited in utility. But for websites or companies that have that sort of limited utility, and they don't need to go to the full-blown need an application in the App Store or in the Google Play Store, that's really the future. I mean, that's where these kind of low-grade, simple applications are going to go, where I'm giving you basically a downloadable. You don't have to go to the App Store. You can just kind of download it directly by going to the website. And that's going to probably take over, let's say a good 60, 70% of the market. Now, the other part of the market is obviously people who are what are called specific use applications. So your Instagrams, even your sort of Facebook mobiles, and other applications that really are only suitable for on the go. There's still going to be a need for that. There's still going to be lots of development for those things. Anything that uses sort of geolocation or needs access to a camera, eminently practical to sort of do that. Or for people that are doing sort of a lot of movement, you're going to see these like industry specific and specific use apps. And I think there's also going to be a sort of a continuing set of innovation for people like coming to the market with a new idea that just hasn't been there as it relates to any sort of social network or CRM or these types of things. So I think you'll continue to see that. But I think for the majority of businesses, the way they're going to go create apps is by sort of taking their existing experience and then making it so that it's consumable on a web device via a progressive web application where you can just download without having to put it in the App Store. The problem with apps, and we do a lot of them, and we haven't really seen any slowdown in the number of apps coming to market. The problem with apps is that you have a different code base that you have to maintain separate from your core application, at least on the front end. Typically, the back ends are the same if you're writing things correctly. But if you've got a sort of a unique, what's called a view for your front end, that's a different code base that's got to be maintained. It's just more work. So I think businesses that are trying to provide that sort of native application experience are going to take a second look and start looking at, hey, maybe I could save a little cost, but then also provide the same value by doing a progressive web application.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. That's very interesting. And so is that like, I'm thinking about it the same way where you can like have a website experience, but then you can like almost download it as an icon onto your phone, or is it more intelligent than that?
It's exactly similar to what you just mentioned, except it's more intelligent than that. I can get actual application features in the downloaded PWA version, and I can still make, let's say, the database calls out to the server from the downloaded application. Because in most applications, let's talk about Facebook or let's talk about Instagram, I'm still downloading components from the web. I'm still taking that off of a web server and then storing it on my sort of physical device for a short period of time. And with a progressive web application, you can still do that, right? But you just don't need to have your stuff in the App Store, and you don't need to go to the sort of full-blown native experience in most cases. Not in all cases, but in most cases.
Got it. Okay, very cool. And and obviously making a whole bunch of different products across a whole bunch of different channels. Actually, before I dive into that, I wanted to ask you, what apps or tools or softwares have you seen in the last little bit that have like impressed you in a big way? Maybe it's something that you guys made, or maybe it's something else that came out. I'm really impressed by what they did here.
So I'll self-promote for a second and talk about something that we've made. So we have actually a CRM product called OrCourse Automation. And effectively, look, there's 360 CRMs on the market. They don't all do the same thing. There are, in some cases, very niche. But what ours does is it takes all of these marketing and communication and sales automation tools. So you have calling, you have SMS, you have sequences, you have inbound tracking, et cetera. And we've rolled it all into one tool and packaged that into what we traditionally have with a CRM. And the advantage of that, and then we're somebody who we used to use Salesforce, we used to use FrontSpin, we used to use MailChimp as our sort of mail provider. We had another auto dialer that we used for calling. The advantage of having all of that stuff in one place is reporting is unified, data is very clean, it's less clicks and less time spent for the sales teams, and we see all that data in one place, and it's really, really seamless. And I think to sort of talk about the power of that, it's really kind of transformed our sales team and our sales process. But I think you're going to see a lot of consolidation in software generally, where you're going to have a lot of these kind of, let's call them super apps, right? You're going to have super programs that take all of these little pieces that existed elsewhere, combine them in one place in a powerful experience. And I think that's really sort of the future of some of these major platforms. A second thing that we're doing is we're doing a lot of work in the healthcare space. And I think you're going to continue to see software take root in the healthcare space. So, to contrast sort of two things we've done in the healthcare space. One, we had a radiologist who was, he had his own company, and he was basically had his own server at his physical offices and was maintaining all of these, HIPAA compliant documents, storage. He had this suite of integrated tools that let them kind of manage their radiology practice. But it was, archaic. It was super, like, you had to go to folder structures, you had to type in names, you had to like open the terminal to type things in. And this is a, several $1 million business, right? And I think that was like dinosaur tech compared to what you would expect from your healthcare providers who you'd hope are bleeding edge. So it's kind of scary, right? We take a lot of things for granted in that we have these really, really advanced technologies just available to us on our phone. We can look things up in real time, but there's, actual practitioners using really old legacy technology to sort of manage their day-to-day. What are they not taking advantage of? And so we're helping sort of transform companies like that in the healthcare space. And then on the other side, we've already helped people build some research tools. So we have one client that has a tool that lets them do prospective studies. So let's say you have knee surgery, or you have a group of a hospital group that does a lot of knee surgeries, and they want to do a prospective study to understand, hey, how's that knee implant or knee replacement surgery doing? How are those patient outcomes doing? But they need to measure that in a statistically randomized way that helps them really understand, hey, is that outcome actually the desired outcome? Is it effective? Is it effective treatment? And ultimately work towards sort of understanding better treatments that could be utilized in the future. So those tools, while that may not sound super sexy, consider that you used to need a team of people to conduct that research, right? Because you'd literally have people with a clipboard, and they'd be calling people, and then they'd check things off, and then they'd fill it out. Well, all of that can be done in an automated fashion now, where you have folks receiving an SMS message, they receive an email. If they need to follow up manually, they can do that from the tool, right? They can see, oh, this person I need to call. Their data is still kept HIPAA compliant and secure. And you're able to sort of get that research information you need, A, much more cheaply, and B, much more quickly. And I think you're going to see a lot of outcomes like that in the healthcare space that are going to really sort of radically speed up the way we're doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know healthcare data just as a whole it's a brutal industry. I know even like just on the outskirts of Toronto, there's still people that do like actual like physical papers that get couriered from office to office in their records still. I mean, like literally not even digitized at all, which is
it's
a little
wild.
terrifying. Yeah,
very much so.
Is the CRM piece that you're building, is that something that you've productized, or is it just an internal thing that you built?
It was an internal thing for a very long time. We just recently sort of productized it and made it live. We have active users, and that user count is growing month over month. The product is, if you go to tryoncourse.com, you can basically see all the information. It's typical sort of SaaS looking website. You can see all the information about it. And that came out of our experience, A, using all those other tools, but then B, our experience serving clients and seeing like, it's really just kind of too much to have all of these, different apps in one place. And we really just kind of need to consolidate everything.
Yeah. Well, and I think the challenge with it, and we've demoed a lot of different things like that, and it always feels like there's some big gap. There's like, oh, it's 75% perfect, but then there's like one thing, and you're like, well, I don't really want to roll up everything into getting a 75% answer. If it was 100%, then I'm good. Even things like HubSpot, I find falls like really short in a lot of ways, because it's like built with like some of the stuff I don't really understand why they did what they did, but it's like this, $800 to $1,000 per month tool, and I'm like, I'd rather spend almost use the other apps and spend the time. So I will be checking that out for me. I'm always interested in stuff like that. That's cool.
Yeah, we use HubSpot too, and it was the same sort of thing. It's like, are we really getting $800 of value a month in what we're spending for this tool? And the answer ultimately was no, right? Because we only needed this sort of narrow segment. Now, the objective with our tool is to, slowly expand the functionality without expanding the price. And the advantage we have is as a company, we've been using it ourselves for the better part of a year and a half. And we've been developing it for sort of 2 years. And so, we are at a point where we think, well, okay, A, this is sellable. And so that's why we put it on the market in September. But B, we're just going to continue to sort of roll with this thing, and we're going to add the features that we need, the features that our clients need. And given that we're a software development company helping other, and this is one of our subsidiaries, but helping other companies sort of solve their core programming needs, we're going to come up with new ideas, and we're going to want to incorporate those over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll check it out. I'll link it in the show notes too, because I know a lot of people are hungry for a really solid solution like that. So it'll be interesting to check it out. So I'd love to pick your brain a little bit. I mean, obviously you guys have had quite a bit of success getting to the growth and to the size that you're at. I'd love to pick your brain about, how do you guys think about marketing? How do you guys think about, developing leads and that kind of stuff? What's been like the most successful thing? What's some stuff that hasn't worked?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've discovered pretty early on in marketing is there's no silver bullet, right? You could do campaigns, marketing campaigns that are exceptionally effective, right? They're really going to have a really good ROI on that spend for that campaign. You're going to have others that are just duds, right? But you can't, as a business, you can't lean on just one thing. You kind of need to take an all of the above strategy, right? So pick your 5 things you're going to focus on, and then kill your dogs, right? The stuff that just doesn't work, knock it down. Obviously some things take a longer time to play out, right? So run the experiment to the length that you need to run the experiment, but don't be over reliant on just one thing, right? You're building a wall to basically the customers are going to come to your storefront, right? You're building the front of your storefront, so to speak, and it's brick by brick. It is not just a silver bullet for sort of solving your marketing woes, right? So take the approach of, hey, here's a particular process or a particular way of marketing my business. I'm going to definitely try this, and I'm also going to try 4 other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have do you mind sharing what are your kind of top 3 channels? Like, how do you guys I mean,
Sure.
without diving into too much detail, but just kind of like, is it content marketing? Is it events? Is it ads? Is it cold outreach? Like, what are your kind of top three that you focus on as a company that size?
We do like 10 or 20 different things, but what we try to do is we try to be really good at like 3 or 4 things. The thing that we do exceptionally well is obviously, like, I try to get on shows with like you and sort of talk about our business and how we help folks. But then B, it's really writing really thoughtful pieces about the work that we've done and the work that we're doing and basically like the technology ecosystem, right? So that's the path we've chosen because it gets us the audience that we want and the type of customer that we want. And we're sort of still obviously every day shaping that, and it also changes every day based on market conditions. But those are the things that we've picked. We're aware of competitors that they really just thrive off of ads, right? But we've chosen not to sort of compete against their sort of marketing space in ads, and we've chosen not to compete against them in, say, cold email outreach. We don't know those. We don't know how to get to the inbox, right? So we just kind of don't play that game.
Got it. And so it sounds like it's more of like a thought leadership, content contribution into the ecosystem kind of approach.
Very much so. And that's not to say that we won't move into other sort of marketing verticals, but until we understand something well enough that we can sort of comfortably go in and win, we're gonna kind of like stay at the beach, so to speak, put our toes in the sand, and not necessarily jump in the water, sort of with our bathing suit.
Got it. And then how do you market the SaaS thing? I mean, it sounds like it came out of a need, which is a great place for a product to come out of for sure. And you've got it up and some people are aware of it, but are you guys actively growing that? I mean, obviously there's a level of attraction with SaaS products to the scalability and those components of it as you know from building those products.
Sure.
Are you kind of actively working on that stuff, or is it kind of a byproduct of other conversations?
No, I think that's a great question. So we're sort of, again, at the infancy of that product. So there's a couple of things we're sort of doing, and we're taking a really structured, careful approach. Eventually, sort of the long term, when we get into full-blown growth mode, it's going to be about, if you look at what it says with VC data in terms of software companies raising money, it's like 53 cents on every dollar they raise goes to marketing, goes to sort of ad spend and these sorts of things. And we're not there, and we're not probably going to raise money, so our approach is a little different. But we're also not at the point where the budget we're spending is geared towards marketing more than it's geared towards product development and support. So right now, the way we're marketing is actually we're doing this sort of cold sales outreach with an SDR team. We're building up sort of our knowledge base on the website to get authority, right? So our domain authority, we started from we're like 43 million. We ranked like 43 million in the US. And I think recently now we're at like 15, right? Things won't get interesting until we're in that top 3 million, but we're working on that. And we're working to sort of edge that up. And that's probably 6-8 months away if we can continue at the pace we're going, which is pretty good. So once we get that to sort of a healthy level, that's going to mean that we're going to have a certain amount of inbound organic traffic that's going to come from the content that we've created. We kind of slow down a little bit on that and just let the content that we have seed out into the marketplace, right? We're starting to get links and starting to get traffic, starting to get attention to that. But we don't need to produce as much. Once we can sort of dial that back and we have that sort of authoritative stance in the market, we're going to move probably towards bottom of the funnel ads where we can go after really, really specific people. And then our sales team, of course, is going to feed the information that says like, hey, here's a honeypot. This is a market that we want to go after. Here's a group of people that are really valuable for us to chase and where we think we can help with our product. And they're going to sort of inform those decisions as we go around. Right now, we're taking sort of a broad brush approach to sort of building that spider web in our marketing for that product.
Got it. Yeah, sounds very sensible. You have a very like sensible approach about you as a whole. So I'm not surprised by that answer. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you don't know, the challenge is dumping money into ads at all in the early stages is so risky because you don't know what the churn of those people look like. You might get a couple people in the early stage and you don't know how long they stick around for. And so, yeah, that is a big challenge at the beginning of those types of products for sure.
Right. And right now, I mean, we do have customers, and we're kind of doubling every month, if you will. And those customers are informing us as to the features they like, the type of support they like. And until we're dead set on, here's the type of company we want that to be, we don't want to sort of go hard on the paint, as it will, in any one direction until we've got a wide enough audience that we can say, we really like this group over here, but they're just not our cup of tea. We're really going to sort of cater to these folks. Right now, we are kind of catering to everybody, and we want to sort of cast a wide enough net, so to speak, at the start that we're not kind of turning anybody away.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, look, I mean, that was really insightful. I mean, it seems like you guys have a great thing going. With the success of that, the launch of the product. How can people find you guys if they're now? Obviously, I look on your website. It showed that you do work with everything from kind of small to mid to large. And so, if people that are listening have an interest in a technology product or want to like get an assessment of what they could be doing, how would they reach you?
Yeah, great question. So obviously the best way is the contact form on our website. I see actually all of those communications that go in. So zibtek.com, www.zibtek.com. And then if you want to just send an email and have us see that email, again, something I'm CC'd on. I won't necessarily be the person responding, but I definitely see it. It's hello@zibtek.com. And that sort of goes to a broader distribution. And you're right. We don't sort of shut anybody out. We're technology agnostic, right? So we're not harking on any one particular technology. And then B, part of the reason why we'll go help some of these smaller firms is because that's really kind of how we started, right? 10 years ago, we were tiny. And then, 15 years prior, we were a startup ourselves, right? So we, A, understand the value that can be created by people with new ideas. And then B, don't want to sort of push any of those people out of the market because they can really sort of turn into wonderful opportunities for both parties. And so both enterprise side, we've helped Google and Adobe that are our clients, and then startups and everything in between.
Got it. Very cool. Well, I'll link that in the show notes. And then once again, what was the domain again for the SaaS tool?
The domain is try, T-R-Y, on, COURSE.com. So try OnCourse.com. Yep.
Awesome.
.com. Yep.
Great. Well, man, thank you so much for taking the time. And it was great to get to know you in the business a little bit. And I wish you all the best.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.